Okay, here we go. Awesome. Welcome in, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today I am popping on live to do some live readings and give some basic tips for reading birth charts. I hope that you guys will enjoy this. I am doing this today because during Kickstarter season, I like to come on and try to rally a little extra support for the Kickstarter by doing some extra special things for you guys. So today we're going to do some live readings. I'm going to pull up some of your birth charts, tell you about some of the biggest transits that are happening in your birth charts right now, and give you some tips for reading birth charts as I go along. I hope you guys will find it interesting and useful. There's a lot of people who are going to be joining in. So before everybody gets here, I'll just give us like maybe a little bit of lead time before we get started. Let's see here. So, all right. All right, I'm just going to do like a little countdown as people are gathering in. And in the meantime, tell me where you guys are coming from. Awesome. Well, it's good to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you guys where you're coming in from before we get started. Let's see. Virginia, Phoenix, Hong Kong, Australia. That's pretty cool. Staten Island and Scandinavia. Scrolling around here, there's so many. Dublin, that's really cool. Baghdad, Upper West Side. I love it. I'm just seeing where you're all coming from. Southern California. Monique. Hey, Monique's in one of my classes, a couple of my classes, I think. Let's see here. Lots of hellos. So nice to be here with all of you guys. Puerto Rico, another one from Ireland, Katrina from Australia, Jeanette from Michigan. And yeah, there's a ton. Wow, it's so cool to just see that people are tuning in from all over. Here's someone from Trinidad. Love it. So yeah, so today what I'm going to be doing is during Kickstarter season, I like to come on, try to drum up some support for the Kickstarter and try to give something back to you guys by doing some live readings and just giving you guys some tips on how to read birth charts. So that's what we'll be doing today. Before I get into reading some of your charts, and along the way, I'm going to pause and take some breaks and just tell you about some of the rewards you can get when you donate and support this channel in the year ahead. I appreciate you guys letting me, promote the channel and its growth today as well. So what I want to do now is I want to take you over to the Kickstarter, and I'm going to what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link to the Kickstarter into the comments section so that you can see it. So there's the link and you should be able to find it in the comments of the YouTube channel. And when you go to the Kickstarter page, you'll see that there's like a donate button and it'll say back this project. We're at 196 backers right now. Our goal is to get to 1,608 by January 1st, which means that we're getting more support from our audience than we did last year. We've grown almost 10,000 subscribers in the past year. I think a little bit over that at this point. And so many people who watch my channel may not be familiar with my Kickstarter. For the last 40-ish days of the year, I go into sort of a time of reflection and prayer, trying to meditate and prepare myself for another whole year of content creation. And during that time, I raise money from the audience to support this channel and a team of people that I hire to help me with the production of this channel. During that time, I ask for people who get something. If you get something good from this channel, whether it's once every single day you're watching it, or if you get something good a couple times a month or a couple times a year, if something really speaks to you and helps change your life or gives you some good astrological insight, then we ask that you consider pitching in and supporting us in the channel and my whole staff at the end of the year here. We really can't do this work without people pitching in. So we just deeply appreciate it when people who are able to do. And if you can't, if you're not able to financially, your prayers are really appreciated, because it's a critical time for us. We never know exactly, if we're going to generate the support we need to support this whole thing. So, if you can just send a prayer for us that we'd be successful in this endeavor, that would be great too. We really appreciate that. It's a joy to serve you guys every day. I want to tell you about what goes into the creation of all the content on this channel before I do some readings for you guys today. So every day, my routine has been the same for going on 9 years. In the morning, and I get up early and I have a time of prayer or meditation. And the nature of that practice has shifted a little bit recently, since I'm no longer in the Bhakti Yoga faith path. So I'm not doing mantra meditation any longer, but I still have a centering prayer time in my morning. For many years, it was mantra meditation, and before that, it was prayer. And so it's always, it's always changing and evolving. But before I make your content for the day, whatever you ingest, I want people to know that they're getting it from someone who spends time in prayer, in contemplation, reflecting, and trying to just center myself before I open my mouth and speak to you guys. Sometimes hopefully that produces good stuff. Sometimes it does not. But after that's done, then generally speaking, I spend some time with a sacred text. It might be the I Ching, it might be the Tao Te Ching, it might be the Bhagavad Gita. It could be something, that I've never read before, or something I read every day. But I always spend a little bit of time with a sacred text. And then I sit down and I write my talk for the day based on whatever's in the sky. And I try to make content that will be spiritually valuable to you. That's more than just, hey, look, this is what's going to happen. But that's like, this is what's going to happen, and here's how we can learn and grow from this. And try to be a place of spiritual nourishment for people, as well as astrological information. And I try to have fun, along the way, and make it humorous and entertaining, and a lot goes into it. There's a ton. And then, so that all of that process takes 3 to 4 hours every single day, year round, 5 days a week, all year round. And then after that's done, I push it off to a team of people that take it and distribute it across social media, dress it up and make it look nice, sort of producing it, and then getting transcripts on the website and everything like that. So by the time that it is done, it's about a 6-hour process, and that's every single day of the year round. So at the end of the year, we just ask that if you value that, all that goes into it and the final product, if it gives you something good, then use the Kickstarter link. I'm going to put it in the chat box again, right here, so you can find it. Drop us a donation if you're able to. Anything and everything helps. If you can do $5, that helps. If you can do 500, that's amazing. You know what I mean? Whatever is fine. In exchange, the rewards that we offer, we always try to make sure that it's not like you're not getting anything in return as well. So we have a bunch of rewards. The Astrology of 2023 calendars at the basic tier of donating. And then if you scroll down, you can find, like, I do an Astrology of 2023 video where I break down all the major transits of the year. And that is not a talk that I do anywhere else. I have a bunch of other talks that I've presented at conferences, or talks that are for students of astrology that are exclusive. You can't find them anywhere else. I also have a year ahead horoscope reading where you can hear me break down all the major transits of the year for your sun or rising sign. I'm not releasing that anywhere else. Right. So it's like a lot of stuff like that. There's a 4 or 5 hour talk that I give on the meaning of the houses and so forth. There's some mini readings where I'll look at your birth chart and give you a sense of your biggest transit of the year rooted in your birth chart. You're going to see me do some of those today for people after I'm done with my little Kickstarter spiel here. Then the biggest value that you'll find, and this is really the one that helps the Kickstarter go and ends up supporting my whole staff and, makes the whole thing possible, is when people take advantage of the discounts on all of my online classes. So the Roots and Spheres class that my wife and I are teaching in the new year, where we're leading people through all the moon cycles of the year on working with different kinds of plants and herbs, that's on sale. The masterclass series is on sale. My year 1, year 2 horary readings and passages classes, all of which are 1-year programs, really deep, immersive programs meant to help train people to read charts for others, or people who just want to go deeper with astrology. All of those courses are also on sale, over 50% off. That's $400 or $500 off, depending on which course, from the early bird rate as well. So it's like definitely the biggest savings of the year on all of my classes. So anyway, check, and if you bundle them together, you save even more. So thank you very much for letting me just promote the Kickstarter today. One of the reasons that I am also popping on is I like to be just really honest and sincere and open with people about the Kickstarter as it's going. Like those of you who have followed me over the years know that I'm pretty frank about how we're doing with the Kickstarter. Right now, just to give you an idea, we're about 100 backers behind our normal pace. For the past 3-4 years, our normal pace, we're about 100 backers behind that right now. There's a lot of reasons for that. And frankly, if we don't match or beat our record, like it's not the end of the world. I don't come in really with financial expectations so much as I'm just trying to make sure that we're growing our audience and growing our support. But the truth is that we could really use help building more momentum right now because we're off to a relatively slow start relative to where our numbers and our trajectory that we would hope to be on for supporting our channel and our staff. The other big thing that we're doing next year to let everybody know is we are building a donation-based reading clinic. So a good amount of our planned trajectory in terms of support and financial numbers is going into building a donation-based clinic. So what that is, and I'm just calling it that, I don't know what it'll actually be called, but the idea is that it will be a place where people can go who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford an astrological reading and will be able to get a reading at a price that is really reasonable. That doesn't really exist in the astrological industry right now. People who know my work know that I'm very passionate about making sure that astrological education is really accessible for people. But in order to meet my bottom line as a business and with my time, I have to set standardized prices, and my wait time is like a year for a reading. And I don't like that. Like, it doesn't feel great to me. So I've been trying to think of ways that I can make readings more accessible. And I think the best way to do that is to showcase some of my best graduates who are fantastic readers, but who are needing to develop experience and clientele. So what we're doing is giving them an opportunity to work with us for, say, like a year. And during that time, we build and promote their work, and we get them lots of clients because people can come in and afford a reading. And when I first started, the first year, I did like 500 donation-based readings just to gain experience. So the idea is to carry that model over and give my graduates, people who are really talented, an opportunity to work with people who need some help. And in turn, they get experience and they get paid for it as well. So we're not going to be taking any income from this. It is meant to support graduates, students, young budding astrologers, and to make astrology more affordable for people. So when you donate and you help us meet our goal, you're not just helping me like pad my pocketbook. You're legitimately helping a really good project that we're working on that will hopefully be of great benefit to young astrologers and to people who need more affordable astrology. So anyway, I just much love to all of you. Thank you for letting me talk about this. I know you're here to hear about astrology and not about a fundraiser, but I really deeply appreciate your time and hope that you'll continue to value all of the work we do in the year ahead. And like I said, if you're not able to donate, your prayers are super welcome that we would just become better at what we do, take it up to the next level, wherever that is, keep growing as a staff and me as a content creator. And, that we would just be guided in the right direction to be of service to this community and to the astrology community at large. Here is the link one more time in case you want to donate. I put it into the comments section of the YouTube. I am also it will be in the link in the description of this video after it has posted, and in the comments section of this video after it's posted, in case you're watching this after the live feed is done. So yeah, thank you. All right. Well, on that note, I'm really excited to do some live readings and get into some chart discussion and hopefully give you guys some tips that are very easy and accessible for you to immediately apply to the way you look at birth charts. Okay. So let's see here. I'm going to go through. Yeah, everyone's already. So put your name, date, time, and location of birth into the chat box. You got to be make sure you're ready for. I'm going to look at your chart. I'm going to tell you exactly what I see in terms of what's cooking. So just make sure you're ready for that. And we'll get into it here. All right. And please don't spam it, over and over and over. Let's see here. I see Julene. So Julene, I'm going to take a look at your chart. Give me just a second to pull it up. And It goes so quickly. So there we go. Okay. June 4th, 1965, 5:44 a.m. in Phoenix, Arizona. You just double check that. So it is, always double check because sometimes I've done it and then I'll give a reading. They'll be like, you put in the wrong info. All right. So we've got June 4th, 1965 in Phoenix, Arizona at 5:44 a.m. All right. Let's see what's going on in your chart, Julene, and try to give you a feel for some of the biggest transits that are cooking for you right now. And I'm going to actually pull up a buy wheel first before I put this on the screen. All right, here we go. I've got dual screens, so I've got to move this around just a little bit. Okay, here we go. So, just got to take a minute to sort of scan your chart and see what's shaping up right now. All right, a few things to point out. I like to look and just see like, okay, what are the biggest transits? One of the simplest ways you can do that, if you're just starting with a chart and you're going like, where do I even start? Start with Pluto and go down through the outer planets first and just look for conjunctions, squares, or oppositions. So for example, if I start with Pluto right here, and I just start by saying, is there any square to anything around 26 Libra? The inner wheel is the birth chart, the outer wheel are the transits. And no, there's no planets here in the 5th. I'm using whole sign houses, which we do in Hellenistic astrology. Nothing in the 11th, nothing in the 2nd. So Pluto right now is not a big actor on the stage in terms of the major transits that are in the process of happening or are about to be formed. And so then I'm going to go down to my next planet in order of speed, which would be Neptune. If I look at Neptune, it has been conjoined with Saturn recently, and I can see if I draw across the wheel that it did have an opposition to Mars, but that's a little while ago. It was square the descendant and ascendant, but again, a little while ago and really done with those transits now. But I notice that Neptune is approaching a square to Venus. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to move Neptune along. And actually, I'll just draw this a little bit neater. So you can see that Neptune reaches the 27th degree of Pisces and starts squaring Venus in Gemini. And that happens around May, the middle of May of 2023. Now let's kind of play this out and see how long this lasts. So it's going to go into the exact square. It actually turns retrograde before it makes it down to the minute. But the exact square is early July. Well, I guess let me just back it up slightly. It'd be late June. And then it stations, turns retrograde, and doesn't move off that 27th degree until like late August. So if you back this up, the overall timing of Neptune on the 27th degree, which is roughly the exact square to your natal Venus, would be from mid-May to late August. Now it's going to come back again after that, and it'll do so after it retrogrades. So let's just take it forward and I'll show you. So you're going to see it then backs off later in the year, stations and turns direct at the very end of 2023. And then you're in the midst of a Saturn return, looks like your second Saturn return in 2024. And it's right around that same time of your Saturn return that Neptune is once again squaring your natal Venus. So now, how would you read that? I'm just isolating this transit. There are others that I could have looked at too, but we'll just keep it focused on this one. So how would I read that for Julene? Well, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. Neptune to Venus topically, not rooted in the houses, but just rooted in the topical nature of the planets themselves. You can always isolate that, or you can look at those topics in combination with house topics. But people sometimes feel like they have to, and you don't. You can isolate planet to planet combinations, or you can isolate topical planet delineations in addition to the house topics that they are located in. So, and sometimes both is really good, and sometimes isolating is good too. I find that with outer planets, they don't often care a whole lot about what house they're in as much as they bring their own significations to bear on whatever planet they're aspecting. So, for example, in this case, Neptune to Venus, I will see 9 times out of 10 kind of disregard the house topics, maybe, or like the volume on the house topics is like down to 50%, whereas the Neptune Venus combination is just very bright and vivid on its own. So Neptune to Venus could be, an amplification of all things romantic, sexual, imaginative, artistic, feminine, and you're just seeing Neptune, glamorize those topics in your life, and especially in your own body, in your own personality, in your own psychology. The need to bring Neptune to bear on how you look or how you speak or how you think or something about your personality or character will become really strong, because what we're doing is we're looking at Venus in the first house, a place of character, physical appearance, psychology, personality, and we're saying that Neptune is suddenly going to be presenting the need to incorporate those elements, Neptunian elements, into the personality in a Venusian manner. So it's as though the Venus aspect of your personality, the Venus and Gemini aspect of your personality, is going to be, asked to bring Neptune into the conversation. So if Venus in Gemini tends to be, let's say you like to think about a lot of different things, and you have a hard time deciding what you want or what you desire because there's so many options, right? A very typical Venus and Gemini kind of thing. Neptune in Pisces comes along and suddenly makes you completely emotionally, absorbed and maybe even fanatical or obsessed with something, right? It could be something that you want to wear, or something you want to become, or something creatively that you get really interested in. But the idea that you have a choice just goes out the window, because Neptune in, the sign of Venus's exaltation, in a water sign, a sign of Jupiter that has a lot of conviction behind it, will overwhelm the normally, more like mental vacillating elements of Venus and Gemini, and will just sort of overwhelm it with an emotional impulse. And so you could find that Neptunian impulse is overwhelming what is normally a more flexible, fluid, and maybe ambivalent Venus and Gemini. Suddenly you're swept up in romantic frenzy, in other words. But you could also see it applying topically. So that's just one example of how Neptune can interact with Venus in the first house and bring its significations to bear on Venus. And you're more or less putting them in a vacuum. I anchored Venus a little bit in the first house topics, but mostly what we were looking at was just how does Neptune impact Venus? And just anchoring the natal planet of Venus, not so much the transiting planet in the 10th. But now you could combine them. For example, does Neptune in the 10th house squaring Venus in the first bring about the need for some kind of, not only an identity change or a change of appearance, but a change of psychology, personality, or appearance as it relates to your career or public image or reputation or your vocation or career path? The reason to believe that something like that could be happening is also because you've got a Saturn return going on in that house at the same time. So what starts as something that might be very existential, like how do I look or feel as a woman, or what do I love, or what am I attracted to, or what pulls on my heartstrings or my imagination as a woman, very Venus Neptune with Venus in the first house, now becomes, what am I doing with my career, or who am I, and what are my ambitions, or what am I good at, or what do I want to be doing to serve other people? Sometimes something like this comes up when you're like, look, I feel bored at work, a Saturn return in the 10th house while Neptune is squaring your Venus. I need something more imaginatively satisfying. And I'm getting dried up and bored and tired of some role or duty that I've been, some role that I've been playing, or some duties that I've had at work. I'm feeling tired and restricted and bound up. And so I'm reaching the end of some kind of cycle around work. Well, at the same time, Neptune's filling me with the desire to transform along the lines of Venus and Neptune. Like let's open up the sensual, imaginative, feminine goddess element of my psyche really wide and let it pour through and inform where I'm going in this other area of my life. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. You can kind of follow that interpretation. But note the simple thing, which is that you can root the interpretation just in natal Venus. You don't have to include a transiting planet's house location. The transiting planet can literally just be an activator for the planet, the natal planet in its house. So in other words, Neptune is just bringing its nature to bear on Venus in the first. Leave out the 10th house that Neptune is in. You can do that, or you can bring in Neptune's location in the 10th house along with Venus's location in the first. But the transiting planet is usually bringing its significations to bear on the natal planet as an activator, and people will often way overemphasize Neptune or whatever the transiting planet's house location is in its topics. Most of the time, when you're going to have both the topics of the planet and the house activating a natal planet, it's going to be because something contextually is pointing to the need to do so. For example, in this case, it's the Saturn return. The Saturn return in the 10th is unmistakably now bringing emphasis to the 10th house. Whereas because a natal planet in the 10th house is getting activated, and so Neptune squaring Venus now more naturally can bring in its 10th house nature into the transit. But if there's no other reason to think that the 10th house is being activated, you'll often see astrologers giving a reading to someone where they'll say, oh, look, Neptune in your 10th is squaring Venus in your first. You're going to have this big career shift. And instead they start undergoing, maybe they have a plastic surgery. And it's like, well, I thought that was going to have something to do with your career. No. It's because the transiting planet, unless it's hitting something in the 10th, is most of the time just an activator for the natal planet. And the natal planet's context is much more important. So hope that makes some sense with people. Okay, well, thank you, Julene, so much. And I hope that helps you. You have an exciting next year and a half with Neptune and Venus in your chart. Let's see, who else would like to volunteer? You know what? I see Fiona or Fion. Not sure how you say that. We're going to take a look at your chart next. Okay, let's see here. December 15th, 1998, 2:57 a.m. Limerick, Ireland. Okay, now I'm going to bring up a bi-wheel again so that we can look at your transits and just see what's cooking. Okie dokie. Alrighty, here we go. I'm trying to figure out how to, okay, this is funny. Yes, okay, there we go. I was like, how do I get that comment to leave? Because then now you can see the screen better. All right, I think it's Fion. I wanted to say Fiona, but that's not right. So anyway, here is your chart. Let's just take a look and let's scan. And again, let's go through the exact same progression. You can look at Pluto and see if it's conjoining or squaring anything to start with or opposing anything. And then you can go through the same thing with Neptune and Uranus. And it's a good way to start. You'll often start noticing other things right away. But if you're looking for a method to follow to get into a chart every time, this is an easy one. So Pluto is conjoined with the IC. That's a transit that is in the mix of happening. It is also square to Saturn, who is the ruler of the IC and of the fourth house. Saturn in the 7th. So that's interesting. I think we'll probably focus on that one, but let's just see what else is going on. And no oppositions. Most people will ask, would you consider Pluto at the IC to be, would you consider Pluto at the IC to be opposing the midheaven? The answer to that is no. And here's a simple visual that can help you. if someone is sitting, is like right at the door of your house knocking, like right at the front door, and exactly opposite across the street is a neighbor whose door is facing you. So by virtue of the fact that they're knocking at your door, they're exactly opposite the door across the street, right? What's more important, the fact that they're knocking at your door or the fact that they happen to be opposite the neighbor's door? Now, the fact that they happen to be opposite to your neighbor's door is just a part of what it means to be knocking at your door, right? So my simple point is, like, always pay more attention to the planet that is on the angle rather than the one it's opposing. It's always going to give you more accurate information. It's way more important, in other words, that Pluto is conjoined the IC than it's opposed the MC. Always more important that Pluto or any other planet is at the descendant, not that it's opposing the ascendant. So a conjunction of a planet to an angle, focus on that angle, not the one it's opposing. That's a thing that people, do all the time. It's a really easy mistake to make, and just one that, will often have you sort of missing the simplest and most easy explanation and making it way more complicated than it needs to be. Okay, let's see here. So we are now going to follow the same pattern with Neptune. So we can see Neptune has recently conjoined Jupiter in Pisces right here. Whoa, the big arrow's back. I don't know why. There it is. Okay, big arrow time. So you can see that Neptune has recently conjoined Jupiter, but that's over now. And it is also squaring the sun. That's about to be over. That's like at the very end of its transit, but that's a big one you've been going through recently. That's tempting to look at that one too. We're not going to be able to look at all of them, but that's a big one. So you can see right away if you just follow this method, and let's go, we'll just do it with Uranus really quickly as well. So Uranus not conjoined anything. It was opposed to the moon a while ago. It's going to square the nodes eventually. It's already passed through the oppositions to these planets, not conjoining anything currently. So of the outer planets, the biggest current transits are Pluto on the IC squaring Saturn and Neptune square to the sun. Now, ideally, we would look at all of that together, but it might be a little bit much to try and piece that together for a demo here on YouTube. So let's just isolate Pluto at the IC, since Neptune is really sort of wrapping up its square to the sun. And you still have a little bit of a ways to go with Pluto on the IC squaring Neptune or squaring Saturn. So that's how I would, pick between the two. It's a little arbitrary, but all right, so first of all, Pluto at the IC. There it is right there. Let's get the timing down. So if we take Pluto forward across that 27th degree, it's going to be about mid-December, and we're going to take it all the way until it's at the 28th degree, which is about mid-January. During that time, it's also still within about 2 degrees of squaring your natal Saturn in the 7th house. Let's draw that so you can see it right there. So here's what I would look at. You've got a fallen Saturn that's retrograde in the 7th house as the ruler of that IC in a pretty close, tight square with the degree of the IC itself. I would look immediately, I would want to ask questions about the difference or the overlap between parental or family karma, specifically maybe your father with Saturn, but it could be either parent or just the general situation of your home growing up, and the topic of marriage or relationships. For example, and I'm just making this up, this is not any kind of psychic hit or anything, because I really don't get those, but if you have a father who was like abusive to a mother, that would be potentially a fitting symbol for Saturn as the ruler of the 4th house of home and family, with Saturn in its fall in Mars's sign in the marriage house. Like, my parents broke up because my father was abusive. Now, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just kind of giving an example. Then when a transit like this comes up, let's say your parents are long divorced, right? But the same kind of karma could make itself, it could manifest in future relationships where you have to relive, maybe on a far lesser level, but maybe you get into a relationship with someone, maybe they're not physically abusive, but maybe they're a little domineering. Maybe you're not so comfortable with that, and maybe it's like, hey, this is a time where I'm learning that my expectations of who I'm with, how they treat me, what the mood or attitude is like, are shifting as I'm healing, what was previously some unresolved, pain or trauma around my family, the environment I grew up in, and the way that marriage was mirrored to me in that environment. That would be like a textbook example of Pluto at the IC while squaring ruler Saturn in the 7th, who's also happens to be in its fall. Now, if you could also look at this just in general as karma. That's like karma meaning the results that are kind of coming to the surface right now, things that are being made manifest from sequences or series of previous choices that are wrapped up in both, partnerships, relationships, sexuality, home and family, or living environment together. What Pluto is going to do, generally speaking, is dredge up some of the deepest, darkest, heaviest, and most toxic patterns in our psyche, in our lives, in our habits and behaviors, make them visible through those areas and those topical areas of life. And as we become aware of it, there's often crisis and pain, and it can be pretty heavy. But then it is as though once we've faced that, oh my God, it's gone, and I'm never going to be the same person again. Now the next person I meet, in some cases, may never quite resemble the same sort of nasty nature of Saturn if it was nasty previously. It's not like Saturn always has to be bad in that house. I'm just saying, like, if Saturn has been problematic in the house of love and relationships, or in relation to home and family, or somehow the two have been tied together, you could find after facing some of this stuff during Pluto transits that, you've learned some lessons, and you'll never quite manifest the same challenges that it's in that happens frequently with Pluto. Pluto touches on a planet in our chart and will bring things up. And as it brings those things up, it's like, okay, wow. And that it's not like that pattern will just never exist ever again, but it may never exist to the same, it may not be ever quite as destructive as it was, or as difficult or as challenging as it was. There's true, like the outer planets, when they hit planets, they're very slow, right? And very process oriented. They're karma breakers. They break chains and sequences of karma. And there's a feeling of being purged and cleansed when Pluto, does something like this. So the most likely areas that I would see you, that this work would be present would be, again, the connection somehow between living environment, home, family, ancestral history, your upbringing, maybe father, and the topic of love, relationships, sexuality, and marriage. And somehow that karma is just coming up now. But I think if you're able to, if you work through that, I think you should be feeling amazingly good, and sort of fresh, and like you're getting a deep reset in those areas. So I hope that makes some sense and is helpful to you. Thank you for letting us look at your chart. All right, I'm going to do a few more. It's really fun to be doing this with you guys, and I hope that I'm explaining things in a way that's helpful. It's like trying to explain things to, not knowing exactly what level and exposure people have had to astrology, so I'm trying to break it down as simply as I can. How about... okay. I see... all right, Amber Fox. It's like, as soon as I'm just, by the way, you guys, it'll be like, it'll show me something, and I'll try to click on it, and then it'll just keep going so quickly that I can't grab it. So I ended up grabbing someone just close to the top, and I apologize. There's no rhyme or reason to how I'm picking any of these. So, all right, let's see. Amber, thank you for volunteering. February 24th, 1981. 81, baby. That's the year I was born too. 1:34 p.m. in Everett, Washington. Let me get the bi-wheel up here. I move it over here. Okay, so let's share the screen again. So let me just make February 24th, 1981. Okay, I've got it. Thank you so much, Amber. Really appreciate you volunteering, and I hope that this is something useful for you. All right, let's do the exact same exercise, and it is just so reliable to look in sequence. Pluto. Is Pluto conjoining anything? Not currently. Is it opposing anything across the chart? Not currently. How about squaring anything in the 10th? Nope. Squaring anything in the 4th? Just finishing a square to natal Pluto, kind of a generational, like a life, more of a general life period. It's a bit more like a Uranus opposition to have your Pluto square. But you're sort of at the tail end of that right now, so we won't focus on that today. We will now move down to Neptune. All right, so Neptune coming into a conjunction with the midheaven. That's exciting. Squaring natal Neptune, another kind of light seasonal moment in life. That's exciting too. Not opposing anything, not squaring anything in the 12th. So Neptune's biggest thing is it's conjoining the MC. We could talk about that. Let's go down to Uranus. We haven't had a Uranus transit yet. I kind of hope that there is one. Let me just see here. All right, where's Uranus? Okay, so Uranus just finishing an opposition to the moon. That's exciting. That must have been... Yeah, I feel like Uranus moon transits, like there's certain planets you can just tell that they're awkward matches with each other. Like Uranus and the moon, especially when they oppose or square one another, can be like, that can be tough on the body, tough on the subject of mothers, women, reproductive health. In the 5th house, children and pregnancy and stuff like that. So be curious to hear if you've had any, what the story has been with Uranus and the moon the past couple of years. But you can see it's not squaring anything imminently. We could go into the square to Mercury, but that's a little far off. So I'm hesitant to do that. Let's see here. We haven't looked at Saturn yet either. Let's just see what Saturn's doing. Well, Saturn's kind of hovering around Mercury right now. That's interesting. And not squaring anything, not opposing anything. Let's see. And I'll just show you. You can do this all the way down to like Jupiter's retrograde. It's about to turn direct, and then it'll head into the 10th house. That's what we're going to look at. We are going to look at the fact that this is about to happen. Check this out, guys. So if we take Jupiter forward just a little bit, it's going to ingress. It's already been into your 10th house a little bit. You've already gotten like a preview of it. But isn't it fascinating that this is going to happen? Look at what Jupiter's going to do. See, it's going to oppose your natal Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra in the 4th house. It will do that in February. And you can see it opposing, let me just draw it in case you can't see it. So there's Jupiter opposing these two planets right here. And that opposition, which I think is pretty fascinating, that's going to happen right before Neptune crosses your midheaven. That's interesting. That is really interesting. So because then what you have now is, sometimes astrologers will refer to it as the rule of 3. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 3, but it's the idea that if you see a couple of different transits all emphasizing the same place or topics in the chart, that's how you start knowing that something is cooking. So Neptune on the midheaven alone is a pretty big transit, especially when it comes to, say, your reputation, your public image, your career, your sense of ambition or calling, success, fame, notability, achievements, or critical life turning points that will somehow shape the trajectory of what you are going to be known for or what you will do publicly. And it may not happen for a long time, but the turning point happens as a slow-moving planet passes the MC. It's like all of that can be a big part of a transit, especially a slow-moving transit from something like Neptune to the midheaven. Well, okay, so at the same time that's happening in March of 2023, isn't it interesting that at the exact same time, you've got Jupiter just flying through, your 10th house, the place that is associated with career. Now, people often ask, what's the difference between the midheaven and the 10th house? And there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. We talk about this at length in my program, so I'll just give you the shortened version. Degrees are not topical. So when you think of like the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, or IC, those degrees do not generate topics. So the midheaven has nothing to do with your career. The descendant has nothing to do with marriage, or the ascendant has nothing to do with like your physical body. People will always think because the degree is in that house, well, the degree itself must be related to that house. That comes also, a lot of that comes from the logic of quadrant-based houses, where the cusp of the house is thought to be an indicator of the topics of that house. In ancient astrology, with the use of whole sign houses, there's a fundamental distinction between houses and degrees that has been lost at times. So what is that? What a degree does, like the midheaven does, is it grants tremendous power to a planet. Okay, so for example, when a planet is at the midheaven, really what it's doing is it's taking that planet and covering it in Christmas lights and giving it steroids. Okay, so it's like that planet becomes super powerful. What degrees do is they empower and make a planet stronger. But what that can mean in the context of divination is not just stronger as in like a planet that has like more power or force. It can mean louder, like imagine if you flipped a tarot spread over and one of the cards levitated an inch off the ground and just started glowing. You would pay attention to that card in the spread. It would be an empowered card. So when a planet is at a degree, when it's at the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, or IC, before we differentiate the differences between any of those degrees, the first way of thinking about a planet crossing that degree is that what it does is it amplifies the power. It's sort of like when you're looking at the chart, you see a planet at that degree, it's suddenly that planet it lifts off the ground a little bit on your chart and it starts glowing. And you're supposed to pay more attention to it because it's speaking more loudly as an omen. Okay, so that's the first meaning of a degree. Then you have the differentiated meaning of the degrees, the rising degree, the culminating degree, the setting degree, or the anti-culminating degree. And they start to take on a little bit of the resemblance of the houses that they're in, but they're still not the same. So for example, the midheaven usually just indicates that the planet that's becoming pumped up and very powerful by virtue of being at that degree is going to be more visible socially. By social, we mean something that's happening out in the visible public sphere of life, but it may or may not have anything to do with your career. For example, I've seen more clients than I could count when they have, maybe a Venus transit to the midheaven at the time that they're getting married, right? It's because it's just something that's going to be on display in the more visible public sphere of your life. It does not necessarily mean that it has anything to do with your career, although because the career is in the public or visible sphere of life, it often does, right? So the same thing happens in the house of marriage, and the ascendant, descendant, and IC all have meanings that are sort of similar to the topics of the house, but they're not identical to them. So and a lot of people get that confused. Okay, well, at any rate, Neptune is going to be on public visible display in Amber's life coming up here this spring. And so what does that mean? Well, what does it mean also considering that Jupiter is in this cardinal fire sign in the 10th house? Jupiter in the 10th house likes to initiate new things. That could mean that you have a new mentor, a new boss, a new company, a new title, that you're learning or developing new skills or going back to school, or it could mean that you're doing something to take your career to the next level. If you have your own business, you're launching a new product. Jupiter in Aries likes to start things, and it often likes to start things in contrast to the past or where things have been because it's the first sign of spring. So it's all about also leaving behind things in the past, blazing a new trail, but not just new as in nobody's ever done this. It can be very inventive, but it's also like people don't think I should do it, or people don't think I can do it, or something like that. So there's kind of like a defiant and often rebellious side to the inceptional quality in Aries. So it's also interesting that Jupiter will be doing this, whatever it's trying to do in your career house in the months ahead. It's doing so in oppositional tension with Saturn and Jupiter in Libra in the 4th house. So the tension between, say, your inner private family or kind of the more personal sphere of activity and the things that you're wanting to do or launch or become more publicly could be they could be clashing with each other a little bit. You often find this is the case when, for example, I work with like 80% women who consume astrology content, right? So a lot of the times you'll see a transit like this when a woman wants to launch an astrology practice, but it doesn't quite match the image of the family that she's in or what her spouse thinks maybe she should be doing. And there could be more or less like tyrannical versions of that, but you get the idea. But whatever it is, there's something new that wants to be born. Now, if that something new that wants to be born is coinciding with what Neptune is trying to empower more publicly, then the thing that wants to be born is new and Neptunian. So what could that mean? Well, that's what happens when people become yoga teachers. They take a Reiki training, or they do something Neptunian, and they get the fire or the excitement to go and launch something new that's a little mystical or spiritual or whatever. But it could also be something, like that's, a little bit more mundane. Like I want to travel to Bali this year and take a month off from work or something. A little like Neptunian, maybe exotic, but not as completely different, as like changing your job or career might be. But also the need to come in, like the way that people see me in the world. It needs to be more Neptunian right now. And there could be some confusion around what that means. And the process of the next year, maybe 2 years, could be about trying to clarify, well, what does it mean to bring Neptune to bear on the way that I show up out in the world, in my reputation or my work or my ambitions or whatever. And you might try a few things on, especially Neptune in a double-bodied water sign. You got to feel it out. But that's what I would say is kind of cooking in your chart right now. So I hope that makes sense to everybody, and that approach overall was, valuable. You can take some things from that as like students of astrology, I guess. I'm going to do one more, but before we do that, if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to point people back to the Kickstarter. A lot of people have joined since we started. Let's just pop on over to the Kickstarter. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are in promotion mode for the Kickstarter. Hey, look, we've gotten a few more backers since we started this tonight. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Here's the link to the Kickstarter. I just put it in the comments and the chat box. If you visit that link, you can be taken to the Kickstarter page. Hey, we're just 2 away from 200. We get 2 more backers, we'll cross the 200 mark today. That would be awesome. When you donate, you're supporting all of this content creation throughout the year, and all of the love and effort that goes into it, not just from me, but can you believe this? I started this 9 years ago, writing horoscopes on Facebook. And then gradually it's grown year in and year out, to the point where, like, literally my choice to get married and have kids came because I was really scared. I told my wife, I was like, I'm really scared to get married and have kids because I don't know if I can support kids in a family being an astrologer. I don't know if that's possible. And the year that we decided to get married was the year that I did the Kickstarter campaign, the very first campaign. And all of a sudden I realized that these horoscopes that I'm making every day, that I'm pouring so much time and energy into, people actually value, to the point where they'll pitch in and donate something of their own, hard-earned money to support me and support this work. And every year since then, I've done the Kickstarter, and it's grown every year thanks to you guys just believing in this channel and believing in the work. I literally wouldn't be here married with kids and being a full-time professional astrologer and doing something like this if it weren't for people being like, hey, we like what you do and we're willing to pitch in and support your work. And now a staff of 10 people that we have, and hopefully we're actually going to be adding a few more people. So we just can't thank you enough, from my staff, my family, and myself, for pitching in at this time of year and supporting us. Pick up a reward when you do so. Really, thank you to everybody who's already donated. We have a long way to go. We're hoping to basically get the support of like 1,400 more people who watch this channel. We have almost 50,000 people who subscribe to this channel. So it's a very small percentage of the audience that supports this and makes this successful. And we just can't thank you enough for that. All right, so I'm done there. Thank you guys. Let me put the link one more time. Pick up 50% off to one of my classes, pick up one of my exclusive talks, and I look forward to another year of creating content. All right, let's see. We're going to go with, let's see here. I'm trying to look at everything that's come through. All right, let's go to Stephanie King. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for volunteering. You mentioned you have a Uranus transit, so I thought, we wanted to see if we could find one. All right. I'm going to put this up. So I got June 13th, 1982, 10:08 a.m. in Erie, Pennsylvania. All right, so we're going to do exactly the same thing, and hopefully the same method will prove valuable to you guys, because I think just repeating the same thing several times can be really helpful. Oh, wait. Sorry, I forgot to put the buy wheel up. Let's do that real quick. Okie dokie, there we go. Okay, we're going to start again with Pluto. We'll work our way down. Pluto conjoining anything? Nope. Opposing anything? Nope. Squaring natal Pluto, not squaring anything in the ninth. So Pluto is not our candidate. Now, I know she said she has a Uranus transit, but we're just going to use the method so that everyone can practice. Oh, look, someone else with Neptune square the sun right now, just finishing up. Nothing conjoining, nothing opposing, squaring natal Neptune. We'll leave that one aside and see what this Uranus transit is doing. Okay, so, whoops, here we go. Let's go down to Uranus. And, oh, look, Uranus is on natal Venus in the 10th house. That's a fun one. Let's definitely do that. And as it is retrograde right now, it is also squaring the ascendant descendant, conjoining natal Venus. Now, earlier I said pay attention to conjunctions over oppositions to angles. It's always okay to pay attention to squares to the angles. I think those are fantastic to look at, but you have to look at it as an axis that it's squaring, and sort of interpret the square to the axis holistically rather than focusing on, say, oh, it's squaring my ascendant. Well, it's also squaring the descendant, right? So you have to take both into account. But let's look at this right now, because this is a fun one and sort of different from anything we've done previously. So one of the things that you can do in order to ground an interpretation is to get a sense of the natal karmic context. This is something we talk about a lot in my classes. So the natal karmic context is going to be rooted not in anything the transiting planets are doing, but what the natal planet is and represents, because most fundamentally transits activate what is in the natal chart. So what is Venus in Taurus at the midheaven or in the 10th house, alongside in that 10th house with a lot of fortune? That is going to pertain to a couple of things. One, Venus is the ruler of the MC, is sort of close to the MC. The lot of fortune is pretty close to the MC. So generally speaking, Venus can represent something to do with public appearance, the way that the person shows up out in the world to other people by virtue of what they do for a living, or just by virtue of how they show up in the public sphere, in whatever context that might be. So Venus could signify public appearance or reputation. Venus could signify something of the topics of the person's actual career or career interests. Now, just because you have a planet in that house doesn't mean that it's going to be easy or successful to have a career that resembles that planet based on lots of other factors in the chart. For example, Stephanie has the sun opposite Neptune in her chart. And I'm not saying this is you at all, Stephanie. I'm just giving an example. So please don't take this personally, unless I get it right. But okay, so for example, someone with you might look at this chart and it'd be very easy to say, oh, well, they're going to do something in fashion or design, or they're going to do something involving, something feminine, Venus and earthy, like they're going to be into nutrition or the body or fitness or, cosmetics, or they're going to be an esthetician or, something Venus-y. They're going to be a dancer, whatever. You're going to think of Venus stuff. But when you look at the natal karmic context around the topic of ambitions in general, right, which would be represented by the sun, and who also is the ascendant ruler, that sun is in the 11th house opposite Neptune. Now, the 11th house was associated with hopes, wishes, and dreams. Well, the sun is opposite Neptune, which is also often associated with dreams and visions and hallucinations and imagination and illusion. So could you see someone, especially the sun in a double-bodied sign like Gemini, and by the way, Mercury in this chart is stationing. That's an interesting point. Could you see someone, in other words, who's a big thinker, a big dreamer, who has lots of different ideas and things that they want to do and become, restless, exciting, stimulating to be around, friendly, like all kind of Gemini with Leo rising characteristics. Opposite Neptune in the 5th house, a house associated with creativity, lots of dreams, lots of irons in the fire, and that certainly starts to make sense of Venus at the midheaven. Okay, this person's going to have a lot of different artistic endeavors or whatever, but that opposition from the sun to Neptune could easily mean that it is somehow harder for them to land on or choose an exact way of bringing Venus to bear on their career path. So it doesn't, no, just because you see Venus in that house doesn't mean that like, oh, Venus is in her own sign in the 10th house as the ruler of the midheaven, she must be like a very famous actress or something. Well, it could also be that this person is talented, successful, very Venus-y, but has a lot of different interests and maybe is sort of restless and has a hard time settling on those things. Okay, now why would that be important? Because when Uranus comes over Venus right now, you could see one of two things. One, you could see, okay, some kind of exciting Uranian shift in their career, their public reputation, they're doing something new, original, innovative, or you could see person starting to get frustrated because of the constant unstable nature of their own, their own personality. Like, I'm a dreamer and I like to do lots of different things and I'm very talented and everyone knows me as a Venus-y type, but I there's often too many irons in the fire and there's this sense of like wavering and not getting stable on any one thing. And so you could see something like that in a case like this, but it's the context of the karma in the chart that gives us like that specific read on Venus. Because Venus in the 10th house, again, you might read as, well, those are her ambitions and it's a well-dignified planet, so she must blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but look at what else the chart is saying about ambitions when you have the sun as the ascendant ruler in the 11th house in Gemini, opposite Neptune in the 5th. This could also be a moment where, a person is maybe for the very first time having that breakthrough where it's like, well, I've had a lot of different ambitions I've been a dancer, I've studied nutrition, I've, maybe a whole bunch of different Venus things that they've done. Uranus is going over that Venus right now, along with eclipses that have been happening in the 10th house with the North Node there, right? And suddenly the person goes, I've always kind of had a lot of different things, but now something's catching fire. Like, Uranus can be very Promethean in the sense that it brings light and heat and passion. So suddenly, whereas Venus has been coexisting with maybe a little bit more wishy-washy Sun-Neptune opposition, not lacking any creativity, but maybe lacking some staying power. But now Uranus going over that is lighting Venus on fire and saying, no, this is what I want to do. So you could see something like that happening. Now, let's just flip it around and play with a slightly different interpretation. You could also be looking at this and saying, okay, my public appearance is changing somehow. You can see Mars retrograde going over the sun in the 11th house, so maybe something about my ambitions or my work or my title or my career is going through a recreation. I'm revising or shifting something of what I do or how I appear in the world, something like that. It might be a little bit experimental or off the beaten track or whatever. Maybe this person has never had a hard time with stability in their creative interests. Maybe they haven't vacillated. Maybe they've always had a few things they've been very passionate about and have just been good at them or whatever. In which case, though, this could then represent some kind of renaissance or period of recreation around their career, or again, like sort of how they show up in the world or something like that. Now, Venus also, it has to be said, does rule sex, love, relationships. And so could you see, is there any way that we could be seeing like Venus on Uranus when a person gets divorced, when a person goes through a breakup? Very publicly, for a period of time, everyone sees that, you're going through a change in your public identity. Oh, you're moving out of your boyfriend's house. All of your friends know. And so Uranus on Venus in the 10th house could mean that a lot of people in your life are seeing you go through something right now that is actually about love and relationships or sexuality or something like that. So you have a range of different ways of looking at it, in other words. And I hope that in just kind of going through some of those, you get a feel for how flexible the archetypes can be and how important it is when we talk to clients to have a range of different possibilities, so that when you give that to a client, they can kind of say, okay. Oh, that one, that really rings true. Whereas if you go in as an astrologer and you've thrown one dart and tried to hit the bullseye, most of the time, you could offend someone by your lack of originality, or they could feel kind of like pegged or like pigeonholed. And you could also just be wrong, and then they'll just think, well, they're a bad astrologer. Well, your interpretation archetypally might have been super accurate. It's just that there's 3 other potential interpretations, and because you didn't include them, you didn't get to the heart of the matter. Because archetypes are multivalent, in other words, when you sit down with a client, you always need to have the ability to look at a transit and before you even talk to the person, have 3 or 4 ideas cooking about what might be happening. And when you have those stories in your head and then you present them to someone and then ask for feedback, that's when a cooperative moment of discovery can happen in a reading with someone. And then you start making sense of the transit together. But you come prepared with like several different ideas. So I hope that that helps, Stephanie. I hope that, whatever you're going through, it's, Uranus and Venus is so inventive and exciting. And I think anything from like when Uranus Venus makes me think of like the science of beauty, like people coming up with anti-aging products in the lab somewhere. That's like a Venus Uranus image that comes to my mind. Or the Rocky Horror Picture Show, very Uranus Venus. Or someone suddenly like someone picking up the 50 Shades of Grey book and deciding to spice up their love life. You know what I mean? Like it can be so much about the bringing some kink or some experimentation to anything Venus related. And for you right now, that would be tapping into the career house in particular. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful for you, Stephanie. And yeah. Okay. Oh, look, we have Kazim. I'm there. Listen, guys, this is really serious. There's someone in the chat box right now. I'm just going to call him out because I'm sick of this shit. I'll just tell you that right now. This guy, Kazim, Melissa Ann, I'm drawn to you, love. No, you're not. You're trying to rip someone off. You've not put in the time or the skill. You've not developed the skill. You don't solicit people like that in, a reading, let alone go and try to hijack people's Instagram accounts, people who work really hard like myself and all my colleagues and friends. Like if you want to give people a reading and get some money from it, make a living, put the work in, stop trying to rip people off. It's bullshit. And I hope you're listening and that you hear it. Because what those fuckers do? They block you so that if you're on Instagram and you're like, oh, hey, look, someone's imitating my account and trying to reach out to other people and give readings, they block you so that you can't report them. So then you as an astrologer have to rely on your audience to report people who are trying to rip them off while impersonating you. It's just, I just can't understand why people like you out there are trying to rip people off. I hope you feel bad about yourself for doing that. I really do, because I'm really, really sick of people doing it. Anyway, so that's about the most fired up you'll see me get. Sorry, everyone. I can't. I'm just so fed up with it. Just leave people alone. Like there's some of us are really trying to do good work. We're trying to help people and we're trying to develop our craft. And it's really terrible for everyone when you do stuff like that. So please don't. All right. Anyway. Okay, well, sorry to end on that note, but I really appreciated hanging out with you guys today. I really like looking at your charts and, taking a look at what's going on. I hope that was helpful for those of you who volunteered. My prayer for all of you is that those transits will bring a lot of joy and laughter and growth, as much as there might be any challenges involved. And that if there are challenges involved with any of those transits, that they would be meaningful, and that you would be a better person for going through them, and that you'd stay curious and patient and present with those transits. And everyone here thanks you for allowing us to learn through your charts as well. So yeah, and with that, thank you everybody so much for supporting me and my channel. Donate to the Kickstarter if you haven't already. I hope you guys are having a great day, and we will see you guys tomorrow. I've got a video planned tomorrow on Saturn's last breath in Aquarius. We're going to talk about what to expect as Saturn is finishing its work with us in Aquarius. All right, take it easy, everyone. You have a great rest of your day. Bye.